Good afternoon and welcome to this unit on organizational context of information system development. The aim of this particular lecture is just to discuss together the nature of business strategy. We want to understand because last week's session we looked at what is organizational change and where does information systems play a part as organizations are changing. We also looked at organizational culture. We looked at the change program, particularly the phases of change and other key aspects. And in so doing, we're trying to see how organizations are impacted by project implementation processes. And one of the key takeaways from that particular lecture was the fact that information system implementation is about handling people issues. So now in this particular lesson, we are continuing from that discussion we had last week, where I want to discuss business strategy. And in so doing, we want to understand the role of the strategy and its place in an organization, as well as the second aim of the particular session is to understand the relationship between the business and the information system strategy. So now, to help us understand, we are saying that most business processes come pre-packaged with a collection of activities that take one or more kinds of input and create an output of value to the consumer. Now, most businesses depend on a well-defined strategy to continue to exist on the market, right? Now, when it comes to the implementation or development of information system, it is all about context. So now, the business context within which system projects are created are directly linked to how the strategy of an organization determines its shape and how that shape determines the organization's processes and their system. Okay? Now, what we mean there, we are saying that when it comes to a business's survival, how it survives, or the steps or the activities that it performs in order for it to survive are determined by the business strategy. Okay. Now, this strategy has got a number of activities that must be undertaken to achieve certain objectives of the organization. And to put it simply, most times you want to break even. So now those processes are what will tell technical people what type of systems should be implemented in the particular organization. We touched on this aspect in last week's lesson. So in today's lesson, we are saying that is now the context, the boundary in which information systems are created. Okay, now the context, ladies and gentlemen, begins with a systems planning activity. And this activity determines which projects are started in line with the needs of the organization, right? And this process, it enables the core business processes or plans in this case to be translated into actual information systems that are implemented to meet the goals of the organization. Okay. So now, when it comes to a typical business goal, these goals, ladies and gentlemen, might be related to profit, or in some instances may be linked to the growth or projected growth of the organization, or a particular market share that the organization wants to occupy on the market. But they could also be focused on customer services, or it can even be safety concerns, including staff development. Now, these business goals lead to the identification of key result areas, which specify in turn the need for the new system. Okay? Now, here we are saying that information systems management, in this case, all right, is concerned with the development of new systems to contribute to the achievement of the business's key result areas. What the business wants to achieve, right, is going to be actualized through the implementation of an information system. Remember, we said that in last week's session, we said that information systems don't exist in a vacuum. So in this particular session, we are giving the context in which information systems are developed. And ideally, or successful information systems are those that are developed as a result of the need to meet the objectives or the goals of the organization. So when the organization has a strategy which has got activities, these activities can be actualized through an information system for improved efficiency, for competitive advantage, and other key aspects that we talked about last time. Okay, so that is our foundation. We're saying that the strategy in this case gives us a context in which information systems are developed for organizations in order to meet objectives and goals of the organization. How is that done? There's what we call the system planning activity, right? Now, this system planning activity is the one that determines which projects are started in line with what is supposed to be achieved in the organization. So now this very key activity allows the plans to be converted into computer systems in order to meet the objectives of the organization. Okay, so just to repeat here, we're saying that business goals lead to the identification of key result areas which specify in turn the need for the information system. In other words, it shows the gaps that can be met by the information systems. And the information system management is therefore concerned with the development of new systems to contribute to the achievement of the business's key result areas. That is our foundation for this discussion. So now we'll move and discuss what we have been intimating in the introduction. We want to discuss the strategy. Okay. So now, ladies and gentlemen, we are saying that a well-formulated strategy helps to organize resources into a unique and feasible force based on the competencies and shortcomings of the organization. Okay. Now, this can actually be extended where I will say it is the means by which we are able to integrate organizational goals, policies, as well as actions into a cohesive whole, right? And the strategy is basically a plan to achieve something. What do you want to do? Okay, so in this case, we are saying that in order for you to be able to achieve your objectives as an organization, you develop a strategy. And this strategy brings key aspects of the organization. In this line, we are talking about the goals, policies, procedures, of course, as well as the activities or actions that will be undertaken to achieve what you have planned to achieve. That's why we're saying a strategy is the one that puts all these things together into one comprehensive document. Okay, so now a well-formulated strategy, like I said, helps to organize resources into a unique and feasible force based on the competencies and shortcomings of the organization, on anticipated changes in the environment, and activities by competitors. All right. So now when we are defining our strategy in this part of our course, we are of course quoting James Quinn, one of the many authors for the program. And when we talk about a strategy being a pattern, that is what John Quinn advocates. Okay. We continue. So what are the features of a good strategy? Number one, we are saying that a good strategy is clear. It is not ambiguous. A good strategy should be easily understood. Then secondly, a good strategy keeps the initiative. By this we are saying a good strategy must support empowerment and enhance commitment. Right. Then we are saying a strategy must be concentrated. Not the English definition, but we are saying that a good strategy must put resources at the place and the time where they will generate maximum advantage. You have one ream of paper in the organization. In very simple terms, a good strategy will identify where that ream of paper can be used. If it's in multiple activities, of course, it can be used in all the activities. A good strategy will identify the key activities that will be able to generate higher returns, as opposed to spreading the whole one rim across with minimal effect. That is concentrated. Then we are saying that a good strategy must also be flexible. In this line, we are saying it must be well balanced to take advantage of changes that occur in industry in order to maintain the organization's competitive advantage over its competitors. It should not be so rigid that it doesn't allow you to adapt as it is being implemented. Because normally a good strategy has got a lifespan. And by definition, a strategy must have a lifespan. So we can have a 3-year strategy or 5-year strategic plan and so on. Then after which has to be reviewed in line with what is occurring internally, externally, and so on and so forth. So it must not be in such a way that you have to follow it rigidly. You can't even respond to factors that were not thought about as it was being implemented. That's the level of flexibility that is desired. Then we are saying a good strategy must be well led. Now, for a strategy to be successful, ladies and gentlemen, it demands commitment. Accepting it is not enough, right? But good leadership is needed to turn strategy into a competitive advantage. Leaders especially must walk, not only talk, but must walk the strategy. Okay. Then we are saying a good strategy must be full of surprises. So here we are saying that a strategy should be seeking to gain an advantage over others. So in this light, when a strategy is full of surprises, it means you must aim at gaining advantage out of proportion to the effort expended by doing the unexpected. Okay, you must be able to be competitive by implementing the strategy, right? So here we are saying you are trying to gain an advantage out of proportion to the effort expended by doing the next. It should not be easily guessed. That is why even if we discuss strategies in certain forums, there are certain aspects of the strategy that are not easily shared because those are the ones that are making you to have value as an organization. So in that instance, of course, certain things you can share, but others must be hidden so that you're able to have that edge over other competitors in the market. Then, with those explanations, we can say that we can see a strategy as many things. So number one, we are saying that we can see a strategy as a plan. Okay. So now here, it cuts, of course, but let me explain. When we say it's a consciously intended course of action, here we're looking at the ability to deal with a situation. All right, that is the strategy. It is a plan. What are you going to do? What will be the reaction in the event? So now, when we say it's a consciously intended course of action to deal with a situation, we're talking about, for example, a plan to increase the speed of downloading and uploading files to and from the internet. Right? So you're going to have steps as part of a strategy How exactly are you going to go about to achieve this? Then we are saying a strategy is also a pattern, right? So here it means it's a behavior. Okay. So now it means you are consciously behaving in a certain way. That leads to formalizing this pattern of behavior into a strategy. Is it improved efficiency? Is it reporting early, meaning cutting down on late coming, cutting down on waste, cutting down on dead time for key activities? Now, those are patterns. Consciously, where we will say for each project we undertake, we are going to adhere to this and that standard. Okay. So now you purposefully behave in a certain way, and over time, it becomes an ingrained behavior, it becomes a habit. That's a strategy. Then we are saying that a strategy can also be a position where you are in the market as an organization. Now, regardless of any industry which an organization is occupying, of course, when we say a strategy is a position, we are saying, for example, our position as an organization is that we'll do business analysis, project management, and high level design. Our position is that we'll be active in the public sector, but not in local government. Or our position will be we'll deal with sponsored clients and not those that are self sponsored. Our position will be we'll deal with government contracts and not with private companies. So now that position is a response to the strategy. How you place yourself in short in the market depends on the strategy. That's why we're saying a strategy can also be a position. Then we are saying a strategy, ladies and gentlemen, can also be a perspective. Now, of course, basic we can say set of values, of course, but here we're saying we're talking about individuals united by common thinking or behavior, right? Having a shared vision, you know what you want to achieve 20% growth in the next 3 years. And all the activities in the organization are in line with that 20% increment. So now, if it means excellence, if it means innovation, that will be your perspective. And everything that people do in that organization is in line with how you see yourself, the values you adopt, in line with what you want to achieve. And that's when we'll say a strategy can be seen as a perspective. The values that are held by an organization, right? So, how do we develop this important strategy? Okay. So now, of course, we're going to talk about a few authors here and there, but generally, a strategy is developed in these four important ways. Number one, okay, investigate the existing situation. Here you want to understand where you are. So you are investigating the existing situation in order to get as much data as you can on the facts of the case and people's views and feelings about them. What is it? Where are we? Okay. Now here you do what we have learned inside. You are going to do fact finding, you are going to have stakeholder consultations, you're going to run surveys, but the idea is you're going to collect as much information as possible to help you understand your position as an organization. Then once you understand, you are now going to develop plans of action. What are you going to do, right, to change? So based on what you have found in your existing situation, you are now going to develop ways forward. What are you going to do? And it's not just one. You are going to develop multiple courses of action or feasible courses of action. And when you have done that, you are going to evaluate. Now, as you evaluate, you want to look at when you go a certain way, what will be the outcome? What will happen when you take a certain course of action? And then what will be the consequences, right? So in the module, we talk about upgrading mobile telecommunications technology as well as online banking network. Now, in that instance, we're saying you may experience network failure, right? Negative impact on the business, or down services during commissioning and testing. Okay. So now, when you know what each course of action will give you, meaning what the outcome will be, and the consequence, you will now be able to go to the last stage where you are going to, or second last stage, sorry, not the last stage, second last stage, where you're going to make a decision on what course of action you're going to take. Based on a full understanding of what you are going to achieve, what will be the outcome of that particular action, as well as the consequences, including the impact of those consequences. For how long? And is it an impact that you can bear with, given the outcome that you want to achieve at the end of the day? So based on those considerations, you are going to now make a decision. We are going to take this course of action. Sometimes it's possible to take more than one course of action, right? Then now, when you take a particular course of action, since we said that you are looking at consequences, here we are just now repackaging them and calling them likely risks. What is likely to happen if you take this possible action? So as you take a certain action, of course, you must make an informed decision. That's why now you have to actually open up your minds to say, now, if we do this, what are the likely consequences or risks that we are going to have as a result? So if you accept those risks, then you go ahead and make a particular decision and proceed that way. And once you proceed that way, you are going to evaluate or assess how it is going to pan out. You are going to observe. If you said the outcome, for example, will be an increment in profit of 10%, is it the case? If there are issues that need tightening, then you go ahead and do that. No wonder they are talking about follow it up. Okay, so now this is a general framework for developing a strategy. So of course, we are going to go into other authors. They will talk about tools and so on. But what is key is to understand what each author brings to the table and then be able to know as a project manager when you use one in preference to the other. Okay, so let's move to the first one. Here, we're looking at Greenlay Strategic Management Model. So now, given the previous discussion that we have just had, I'll put all the steps so that we're able to see at a glance what they are. Now, if you look at this, you'll find that these are things we are just from talking about. The only difference is they've been repackaged differently. Okay, these are things that we've actually mentioned in the general strategy formulation framework we are from discussing, but we'll still look at it from Greenlay's perspective. So now we'll start with the first one. Let me just clear this. Okay, so now in analyzing the environment, which is step one, Greenlay looks at this activity as concerned with investigating the internal as well as the external environments of the business and developing a comprehensive understanding of its strengths, weaknesses, competition, and its market within which it is operating. Okay, so it's just being more distinctive compared to what we are from discussing where we said understand the situation. Now, Greenlay advocates to say here you want to understand what is within the organization as well as where it is operating from, environment. So the definitions that we had of an environment in information system development still holds. So Greenlay proposes that number one, you understand what is in the organization and you also understand what is in the environment. Then he says in the second step, under planning the direction, now this one is about what you want to achieve based on what you have found internally as well as externally. So here we're saying possible scenarios is where we create a vision of the business we want to be. We know where we are now, we know the environment. So the question is, where do we want to be in the future? Right? And then here we're looking at overall philosophy for doing business and the range of activities that are to be considered. Okay. So now here we are saying planning may be done, of course, at various levels, like we have discussed. It may be at corporate level, it may be division level, it can even be lower level. Remember, we talked about operational level, tactical level, as well as strategic levels, right? Then he further says that we now plan the strategy. And here he's saying it's about designing the means for going in your planned direction. What activities are you going to perform to achieve what you have agreed on in the second step? All right. So, how are we going to achieve the goal? So, now you may want to pursue more than one approach. Okay. So, you may have more than one course of action. All right. So, you look at maybe you need to rethink your roles and responsibilities, maybe the various jobs that are undertaken at the moment, meaning you are tinkering with the organizational structure depending on what you want to achieve. Sometimes you may introduce new roles, okay? Sometimes you may add, remove departments, and so on. So the idea here is that when you are looking at the how, you also look at how it is supposed to be, what's supposed to be there in order for you to achieve what you have agreed in the second step. Then last but not least, we look at implementation of the strategy. Okay, so here it's just about enacting all the activities that you have identified and agreed upon. And you now start monitoring. Is it achieving what you said it would achieve? And then if not, do we need to change certain activities? Is it possible you can speed them up, slow them down? The new roles and responsibilities, they need to be trained, and so on and so forth. And that is what Greenlay proposed. Okay. Then we can move on, ladies and gentlemen, to the tools used in strategy formulation. So now, of course, there are many tools to help in strategic management processes, but most of them, they lean towards ways of analyzing the current situation, how the organization can assert itself, and so on. So let's look at them. The first one is SWOT analysis. Okay. So now you find that in certain books, it will just be strengths stated on their own, weaknesses, and so on. But for information systems, they are enhanced by looking at what we call quadrants. Okay. So of course, we identify the strengths, weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats that an organization faces. Now here we are saying that based on this, the strengths and the weaknesses here, okay, are an assessment of the internal factors within the organization. While, on the other hand, when we look at the opportunities and threats, these are external to the organization. So now let's understand it. Okay. So now, in segment A, by segment A, we are talking about this part here. Okay. So now, in segment A, here we are talking about those activities in which we are strong. Okay. We have a strength and then there are good opportunities, okay, in the environment. So here we're looking at the strength of the organization and the market is receptive. Okay. Now, by looking at, or depending on the strategy that we have as an organization, here we are playing from a point of strength. Okay. Now, ideally, when you have an opportunity which you have the capacity to take advantage of, it is easy for the organization to be able to do so. If, for example, there's a market for online training, if you're a training institution, and then you have skilled online facilitators, it is very easy or actually more convenient for you to take advantage of that opportunity because it is actually calling to where you are already strong. You may find that there are more customers than what you had planned for. Your strength can be you have abundant infrastructure. So you're able to expand without minimal stress or inconvenience to the organization. Okay? So now, it is possible where you have such a situation which is calling on your strength, you can actually be able to eliminate all the weaknesses that may make your venturing or taking advantage of opportunities to fail, and then you'll be able to excel in that aspect where there are opportunities, right? And idea that's where an organization wants to be. Okay, you're strong and there's an opportunity. Okay, then segment B, here you're looking at where the organization is weak, but there are existing opportunities in the market. There's an opportunity to invest, maybe double, not double, it's not very realistic. Maybe increase profits by 10%, but then as an organization, they're not very liquid. Okay? So now, if you don't take advantage of that opportunity to increase profits by 10%, you don't have the money to invest maybe at that time, you risk the fact that another competitor, which is more liquid, will take advantage of that opportunity. Okay. So now, that is segment B. Segment C, ladies and gentlemen, this is an undesirable situation to be as an organization because this is where you have a weakness and then there's a threat in the environment. Okay? Now, in such instances, when you develop a strategy where you have a weakness and then there's a threat, meaning competitors are strong, able to take advantage, all right? When you create a strategy, when you're in quadrant C, this is where it's a bit challenging to implement. For example, a strategy in this segment may be to reduce the internal weakness and the external threat. Okay. Now, most times that is not feasible. And those are instances where you may simply choose to drop such products. Maybe you have poor quality products and then the market has got high quality but low purchase price of similar products. So instead of competing, you are producing low quality while you know there will be no market. You may simply choose to discontinue where you don't have expertise. So instead of, if you are a training institution, instead of trying to juggle both face-to-face and online, maybe your strength is that you're able to facilitate online, yes, but for the face-to-face, you may have weaknesses, maybe in lack of classrooms, lack of teaching staff, and so on. So in that instance, if you're in C, the option may be to discontinue or to shelve face-to-face in the interim and focus more where you're strong in online. Then the competitors can go ahead and work in that quadrant where you have identified a weakness. Then D, is where you have an internal strength while facing threats in the environment. Now, ideally, the strength can be used to simply deflect the threat in the environment. Okay. Though long term is not encouraged to engage in battles anyhow with competitors. Where you can diversify to something else, do so. But certain situations, you find that maybe you are looking at the same thing with a competitor, but because you have a strength in that, you may deflect or actually completely eliminate, though not always feasible, competitors in that particular line of business. But of course, you choose your battles. Not every situation demands that you expend effort and so on. Long run, it affects productivity, morale, and so on and so forth. And that is our SWOT analysis. Next one, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call the BCG matrix technique. Now, BCG stands for Boston Consulting Group, of course. Now, this model looks at the relationship between a product or a service, where it is currently in the organization, as well as the future potential of the product and how management will deal with it or should deal with it. So with BCG, you are going to classify your products if you are producing something. If you are rendering a service, you also classify it based on how it is currently and how it may be or how it is likely to be in the future. Okay. So now it has 4 products. Number 1 is the wildcard. Now, these are potential good businesses for the future. Okay. And usually they are new, with currently a low market share, but with a high potential for growth. Okay. Then we have the stars. Now, these are products that are actually of high value now, and they're expected to do even better in the future. So now these products are what we call market leaders. These are market leader products, and they need additional investment in order for them to maintain their position even in the future. And as you are looking at products and services in the organization, the hope is that most wildcards, or all wildcards if possible, can become stars. Well performing now and likely to do even better in the future with some more investment. Okay. Then we have the cash cows. These are the current high earners. They are bringing money to the organization, and they are the ones that give the money that we are using to invest in wildcats and stars. Okay. Now, these cash cows have reached their peak. This level is where they are actually able to, or it's the stage at which they are earning, actually, not they are going to, apologies, where they are earning their highest revenue. And we know that once it peaks, it has to come down. So we know to say in the future, these cash cows will go into a decline. Okay, so they will not be able to perform highly into the future. They are giving you revenue now, but we expect that they will go down. Their lifespan is almost done on the market. Okay, so now the idea here is that when you introduce innovation in certain cash cows, you make them slightly different. You revise, you upgrade them, you innovate, you engineer. They will change from cash cows into stars. well performing and also will perform well in the future. If not, they'll go into their natural decline where you retire them. They will lose their market if they are not innovated. So technology actually can enable a cash cow to become a star. Okay? But if it's not feasible, these are products that later on will say we'll leave them to decline. Though it's not really advisable because they're high earners, they should be able to prolong their lifespan, and innovation normally does that. Then last but not least, we have the dogs. Now, these are products that are not earning the way they are supposed to, low income earners. And most times they're being subsidized by other products. They don't bring in any revenue. Okay. Now, they don't have, or they have a little contribution to today's profits, and they are not expected to make any contribution in the future. Either they have lost their market share or there are other products that are better than they are. Okay. So now these are products where they're actually on their way out. Okay. And normally, again, dogs, remove them or shelve them, depending on what is there on the market. So now, why is it important to not categorize your products and services like this? It will help you as you generate your strategy. You know which ones to invest in, you know which ones need innovation, you know which ones must be maintained, and you know which ones you can actually say, for this one, I think we'll end here, or we can hold it, we'll be able to maybe look at it maybe in 2-3 years' time. That is the strength of the BCG. The idea is you categorize all your products and services, and depending on the classification, then you'll be able to strategize. So if you identify, for example, your cash cows, the high earners at the moment, which may not be able to perform well in the future, you can actually look at what information systems can be integrated to convert our cash cows into stars, high earners, now as well as in the future. Okay? What wildcards can you actually implement? New products that are not even there because of an information system, so that it moves from a wildcard into a star and so on. Which services and products are losing you revenue? Then you'll be able to actually stop investing in them. There are some products that have been running in the organization for years and years. It becomes more or less like a tradition. We are known for A, B, C, D. But end of the day, when you perform this analysis, categorization, you discover that it's not actually earning you any, or what is earning you is negligible. Then decisions have to be made as part of a strategy, whether to stop, and so on and so forth. Okay. Competition, ladies and gentlemen, and strategy. So here we are shifting to Michael Porter. So now, according to Porter, one of the key things that he champions is that a strategy is a tool that we can use to gain or to be able to deal with us. Okay. So now, Porter, according to his model, which we also find in business, but for IT, we do trying to change it a bit. Porter says in his model that he calls the 5 forces model, he likens the environment or the competitive world where the business runs as a violent environment where the business position is determined by forces that act upon it. Okay, so now his diagram, of course, is what we are seeing here. So we have, okay, sorry, just a minute. Okay, so I was trying to annotate. So we have this that it says exert force on the business, and this business is existing in a competitive battleground, right? Now, what is the new entrant force, according to Porter? So he says that these, they pose a threat, of course, to competition. Okay. Now, when the environment is okay and competition is weak, you find that this force may not be very apparent. Okay. So now, if the environment looks lucrative, meaning you're making money, that is also now an attraction to new people, new players to come onto the market, according to Porter. So now, the threat that a new person, today I'm selling tomatoes, the same day before the end of the day, another person will come and sell tomatoes. That is the force that is exerted. And if I have 5 customers, when the new person comes, either they'll sell at the same price as myself, or if they are very strategic, they'll sell maybe even a 15 way cheaper than myself. The 5 customers that I had in the morning may not necessarily be the same as I'm going to have tomorrow because someone else has come. Okay. Now, Porter also says that depending on the barriers that you put in place in the environment, you may actually deter entrants to come. So, for example, if you are a banking organization, banking systems, we know that they are quite cost intensive. They're not cheap. I cannot wake up today and say I'm going to open a bank. There are statutory instruments, there are requirements, how much capital, the technologies I must have, and so on. So the fact that the barriers to entry are so stringent, it is very rare that you wake up in the evening and find that a new bank has come onto the market. That's what Porter was saying. So this force, its ability to exert pressure, also depends on the barriers that have been put in place. How conducive, how lucrative the market is, the environment is. So certain requirements for new entrants may actually act as a deterrent to new entrants to even come in the environment where the business is operating. Then he talked about substitute products and services. Okay. Now, here you're talking about products that usually have a certain value addition enhanced from what is existing. Okay. So, to look at history, when the word processor came in, okay, where previously there were typewriters, in most instances, it wiped out typewriters. Instead of the ribbon, instead of typing, moving the paper, and so on, soft copy came in. No need for any ribbon for you to type, and so on. We just talk about printing and so on. It literally retired a whole product and service. Okay. So now, when it comes to technological advancements or changes in the environment, they are often the driving force behind the arrival of substitute products. Something better than what is there. That's a force that can be exerted by substitute products. Then suppliers, ladies and gentlemen, can also exert a force, especially if you have sole suppliers. I'm selling pencils at 3 kwacha because I'm buying them at 2 kwacha from my supplier, and in my environment they are the cheapest. Okay, so now the day they'll start saying I can't sell you at 2 kwacha, I'll sell at 2 kwacha 15 ngwe. It will not be profitable for me to sell my pencils at 3 kwacha. I need to increase, offset the cost of acquisition. So now if that is the only supplier and they increase, then that is now going to exert pressure on the organization. But again, technology can come in where it's able to give us more access to markets. We knock out the middleman. You're actually able to go straight to the manufacturer through technologies, because now we can have suppliers, not only those that are near you, but actually those that are global and at more competitive prices. Then we also have buyers. Now, buyers can exert a force usually only when they're able to buy in volume. So if I'm selling my pencils at 3 kwacha, and then the buyer says, I can buy 500 pencils, but give me at 1 kwacha 50 ngwe. So if I sell the pencils the way I'm selling them now, one customer at a time, it will take me maybe 1-2 months to get my profit at 3 kwacha per pencil. But if I sell now at 2 kwacha 50 ngwe instead of 3 kwacha, I'll get a lump sum now to allow me to reinvest and so on. Now that pressure, we'll find that you also still eat into a profit margin. And if you have a large number of such buyers, end of the day, it will also affect your operation overall as an organization. Okay. Now, when it comes to the same model, Robinson looked at it, that's Wendy Robson, with the lens of technology, where she analyzed the 5 forces. I was actually mentioning it as we were discussing, where she was saying information system can block new entrants. Information systems can help the customer to dominate suppliers. Instead of having a sole supplier, you have more options. And sometimes you find with technology, when your stocks are low, automatically you reorder from the supplier. They were able to give you specialized services, they're able to give you discounts and so on. So that link, you find that when there's an option to actually do with another customer, they are more comfortable with you, their systems are interlinked and so on. It has that retention aspect because of the investment in infrastructure and so on and so forth. Then, Wendy also indicated that information systems can increase the cost of the buyer switching. Happy Heroes Day, they know you, they're able to send you exactly what you want and so on. Sometimes give you discounts, other times they're even able to offer you credit services. So now when you think of going to someone else, retention again is increased, but this time on the buyer side. So you may find that your organization or where you deal with, the business that you deal with, is maybe slightly more expensive, but because of personalized services. Remember, information systems also brings in the aspect of customer relationship management, where the focus is on the customer and what they need. And then you package products and services according to the needs. So now the thought of starting afresh somewhere, getting generalized services when you are used to personalized, that retention is increased or strengthened. Then information systems can also help us to generate, instead of being overtaken by new products and services, technology, with knowing your customer more, you're able to actually generate new products, value addition before even the competitors think about certain things. Okay. Now, she went on to talk about strategies that can actually come about as a result or as a response to the 5 competitive forces. So number 1 is what we call low cost strategy. Okay. So now here is a strategy where you look at reducing, of course, through innovation, reducing the cost of production, which will translate into affordable sale prices. Okay, so high quality but low selling price. And there you find that you make your money by volume sales because they're affordable, people are able to buy in bulk. And that's how you make your money as an organization. So you streamline manufacturing processes, Sometimes streamline even how to access suppliers. Instead of buying from or sourcing from my neighbor, I'm actually able to source from either Lusaka, where it is cheaper. I'm actually even able to source even outside the country. So now when the products come in, and that is through technologies, by the time I'm receiving those goods, I don't spend as much as I would have spent if I had bought from my neighbor. Okay. So now it is easy and possible for me to actually say, instead of selling at 3 kwacha, I can sell at 2 kwacha because I got it at 50 ngwe. Okay. And because everybody else is selling at 3 kwacha, I'm selling at 2 kwacha, you find that I'll be able to sell more volumes. And the more I sell, the higher the profit. Okay. Then there's also now what we call differentiation of products. Now here, we don't look at being low cost. We are looking at understanding the needs of the customer, identifying a market, and then the same product that is being sold by others, you differentiate it by feeding in what the user wants in the product. If you look at maybe the aspect of phones, is it a higher pixel camera? Is it better quality photos? Is it artificial intelligence in the smartphone and so on? And then differentiate it such a way that, of course, cost of production is higher because it has more features, but you price it accordingly. So now those high value customers who are able to afford that phone, that is your target. So when low cost people are selling 10 phones, for you, when you sell one, you make your profit. So you make a high value product and price it accordingly. Not for everybody, but for a select market. And that group waits for those products usually. You can even offer trade-in when the new version comes from 13, 15 pixel, they want to change. You accept the old one to sell at a cheaper price to someone else on the low cost side. Then the differentiated customer is able to buy their custom made high value gadget. That is again enhanced through technology, according to Robson, because you're able to know the needs of the customer and also anticipate them. No, they want a zoom lens that is able to pick in the next town and so on. And you produce that at high cost and price it accordingly. And that is Wendy's assessment. She also ended by talking about the ability of technology to even identify new market niches for organization, places in the market not thought about by competitors, where you can actually have a situation where the business is just strictly known for that particular aspect and other people cannot compete. That was Wendy's analysis. So in the module, there's an example of Bank of Scotland. Take time to go through just to see how technology can actually be able to help organizations deal with competition. Okay. So here, these are just examples of information systems, which we already talked about in the first unit. We'll not dwell on it now. We'll move. And now we just want to finish with Gregory Parsons' strategies for organizations. So now, Parsons offers us 6 strategies for developing information systems. So number 1 is what he identified as centrally planned. Okay, so now centrally planned, this is where the information system function is a service provider and is closely linked to the users that it serves. So information systems are specifically developed for users and in line with what they require. Secondly, he defined what he calls leading edge. Okay, so here talking about innovations, what has not been thought of before. So here the information system function is there to promote new ideas and technologies, as well as keep an eye on technological developments. Okay, so now here talking about doing things that have not been done before. So that element of risk comes in because you don't really know. You can plan, of course, but what is going to actually happen may not be what you had anticipated. So the idea here is you want to promote new ideas, systems that have not been thought of before. That is leading edge. Then we have the free market. Okay, so here the user is free to make a decision on what they want, depending on the result they want to achieve, as well as impact on profits. So here the role of information systems is to behave like a competitive business unit, okay, or maybe a profit center. The idea there is achieving financial targets by charging users and relying on its knowledge of the business to give it an edge over external competitors. So here, information systems, they are there to make profit. So you can actually contract them to build a system for you, or if it is cheaper outside, they can actually go outside. The users are free to go outside, and then they are able to actually, it's like they're operating a business within the business. And most times they're able to finance themselves. Okay. Then we have the monopoly. Now this one is opposite. Here, information and information systems are treated like the asset of the organization. Okay. And the idea is it should be available across the whole company. Okay. And now again, for it to be available to everybody, it must be controlled, must be held by the organization. So now the biggest danger is that it may be slow to respond. There's that sometimes disconnect between the planners, strategists, and the users. Okay. So now here, because it is centrally managed, there may not be avenues where users can actually indicate what they actually want, and sometimes you implement according to what the high planners think is needed, which again can actually be out of touch because they are not at operational level. They don't know what is actually on the ground, the intricacies of those processes and how information systems should be able to respond, including being aware of changes in the environment. So then we also have, ladies and gentlemen, scarce resource. So here we're talking about the IS being limited by availability of resources. Okay. So now it's small, budget line is small. We can't implement everything. We implement based on the value or envisioned value of what you're proposing. If what you want in terms of a system is not going to give us a lot of profit, we'll not go with your suggestion. Okay. Now, here you find that some ideas may not be able to show you the profit that they'll make immediately. Maybe the profit may be long term, but because you're looking at the one with the highest benefit, that's the one that you're going to implement. You find that very good projects that may actually yield more returns may end up being ignored. That is the risk of scarce resource. Then last but not least, this is what we call necessary evil. Okay? So now here is an organization which thinks of information systems as something that is being forced on them. It's not really necessary to what they're doing. They're doing more without the technology. But most times the external factors will force them to implement certain projects. And this is not a good environment for projects because it's like tolerated if at all. Most times sidelined. Okay. So now here IT or information system is just to provide the minimal level, just basics, if at all. If they are low cost, they're not going to cost us so much money, go ahead and implement. If it's more costly, let's leave it for now. Okay? And this is not a good place for project management. You just end up getting frustrated. Okay. So last but not least, let's look at strategy and culture. Now, it is important, ladies and gentlemen, to address, as we have emphasized in previous lectures, human issues, aka cultures, that influence the way organizations are structured, including how they are managed and consequently how projects could be best managed in these environments. So we have a few models. So under strategy and culture, ladies and gentlemen, we have the first one, or the first F, which we look at strategy, okay, which we know is a plan, is a pattern, and so on, series of steps and other issues. Then we are saying it is also about structure. So you find that one strategy will work here, in another place it will fail. Most times, to be very simplistic, the S's are not aligned. So apart from the strategy, there must be structure. What do we mean by this? We are saying that the organizational structure must be in such a way, if they're not in that way, they must be realigned in order to be able to respond to the strategy that is being proposed. If you have an open door policy in the organization, that's the structure, and then strategy says that power must be centralized, it must be focused, then that strategy will not run well because the structure does not support the strategy. The other S, ladies and gentlemen, is systems. Systems are procedures, processes that run in organization which must be in line with what is being proposed in the strategy. The management style, concentration of power are also key when it comes to the success of strategies. Skill sets, okay? So now here we're talking about abilities. Capacities of the organization must be in line. You cannot talk about going fully online. Meantime, no one has facilitation skills in that organization. If the skills are not there, there must be plans to increase capacity before you introduce that strategy for going online. Then the staff themselves, do you have the people in the key positions? You are introducing a learning management system, and there are support staff, technical support staff to run, to maintain, including supporting the users of that new information system. Then last but not least, we talk about shared values. All right. So the principles, the values must also align with the strategy. And these are the things that must be in place in order for strategies to work in an organization, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Now, we can finish off by asking ourselves these key questions or looking at these key aspects. Certain organizations run in a certain way, that is part of their culture. Okay, so now what brings about these cultures, or what can we define as a culture? Of course, we talked about it, we talked about the four types of cultures and so on, but in this particular lecture, we're saying the way work should be organized informs the culture of an organization, how authority is exercised. Others are democracies, others military. So depending on which one, it will also tell us the type of culture, reward systems, okay? Pardon the repetition there. Then the combination of obedience and initiative. Are people able to think on their own? Are they allowed to? Are new ideas welcome, or do people just act as implementers? Okay. Is it about 8 hours in a day? Must you report at 8? Or people are able to report at whatever time so long as they give the necessary deliverables? That also informs the culture. Mode of dressing, is it formal? Is it informal? Is there room for eccentricities? Or must everybody be a professional at all times? Are there rules and procedures? Or is it according to what you want to do and what you see as the best way of implementation? Okay, so now all of the above feed into what we call an organization's culture. And as part of strategy implementation, you ensure that they align. That's why most of the models talked about restructuring if what is on the ground is not aligned. Okay, and that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of this particular lecture. Thank you very much for your attention.